I'm going to try and explain a thing that was a 20-minute video in about 2 minutes, and I'm going to try and expand it. I think I've set myself a challenge, but let's see if we can do it. Humans have biological settings related to safety. This is the polyvagal theory by Stephen Porges. We have 3 different settings. We have safe and able to move and socialise and be engaged and think in nuances. We have unsafe but mobilised, which essentially is fight and flight. And if that gives us 2 options, it's black and white. If we can't choose between the 2 options, we experience anxiety and panic. And then the 3rd setting, if the black and white, the fight and flight doesn't work, and then we sink into feeling unsafe and powerless to help ourselves, our next setting is frozen, collapsed and shut down. This is the Realcovery Model. It has 3 phases here in this very basic version, and now I'm going to use it now to tell the story of being born and then starting to form relationships with other people. Humans are conceived and then born and then grow up into being an adult. This is what I call the growing up on the outside phase. Some people are born into safe environments, so their biological setting is at the very top of the polyvagal ladder. They learn that they can say yes and no. They learn that they can be happy and sad. They learn that they can be all of themselves, the whole of themselves. And I think that would look like this, like a yin-yang. Some people are born and their biological settings and senses detect that they are in an unsafe environment, and so they move down the biological setting ladder to the unsafe but mobilised setting, to the black and white setting, to the fight and flight setting, so they split. I think boundaries, or a sense of boundaries, forms really early on. And if you grow up in a safe environment, I think, like a yin-yang, you learn responsive, flowing behaviours. So you learn that in this particular situation I can say no, in this particular situation I can say yes, and sometimes life is a bit like this. So sometimes it's yes with a bit of no, sometimes it's no with a bit of yes. There's a real sort of flexibility, subtlety, nuance to feeling safe. So I think boundaries form that can then be adapted and shifted. So if your biological systems detect that you are in an environment that is unsafe, I think that changes how boundaries form. Because you're not in the nuanced thinking responsive space, you've dropped down into this fight and flight state, which is only black and white. Black and white are only 2 options, and they give you only 2 choices. You either have to choose fight, or you have to choose flight, or you feel absolutely fucking horrific all the time. Because you can't choose, you enter into this awful state of anxiety. So the anxiety can force you to choose one way or the other. Now, in this version, you're able to have sort of nuanced boundaries. In some situations, you might be able to say yes and you might be able to say no. Or you might be able to say yes with a little bit of no, or no with a little bit of yes. But in this, you have to choose yes or no. So I think some people solidify their boundaries massively, solidly. It's like they have a hard shell, a thick skin. They shut everything off. Their body becomes like a solid armoured container that nothing gets in. So also the feelings, the ability to feel subtle things, I think then disappears. And the ability to let anything in, to learn, to be able to shift and grow, also becomes extremely limited. So I think the body kind of hardens up, and the head then is contained in this space as just an entity, like that. Anyway, this side, of course, because you've got to choose either or, this side is wholly closed. This side is then wholly open. I don't think a boundary forms at all. I think this is like being a wide open door and a sponge. The body absorbs everything. And essentially the dot in the yin yang that represents the head, the reasoning, the ability to adapt and consider and choose, falls out. and he's not present as much. And so you might have all this stuff being absorbed into the body and no ability to go, hang on a minute, maybe I should be saying no to that. Okay, so that's my thinking on that. In order to exist in the world and be a whole human, we need to feel safe and we need to feel connected like this. Opposite and equal things working in complementary ways. If we split like this, that can feel weakened because we're only really living as one half of ourselves. So that feels dangerous and it can reach crisis point. Back to this Realcovery model, this wiggly line represents crisis point. So there we go. Crisis point is when we go from being here, upright and vertical and able to move, to going down a rung, to being horizontal and playing dead, splat. And also it's the space where here we might be breathing really rapidly so that we could potentially run. Here, we start making our breathing really small and held and trying not to be noticed. Try holding your breath. Try holding your breath for a long time. Try not releasing that breath. How does that feel? Straight away, you'll probably got incredible feelings of discomfort, agitation, stress. So being in this phase of unmaking, this space of crisis, that can feel like you are holding your breath. And you can do that for months and months and months and months and months and feel shocking for months. Have you ever sighed out in relief? You know, like, oh, thank God. Yeah. So if something helps you feel a little bit safe and you're able to relax a bit, or if you have made a choice, finally made a choice about something and you can feel that weight lifting from your shoulders, you sigh out, or you might yawn, you might go, oh, like this anyway. Haha, that's my yawn noise. So that's what this is. When that sigh out and that yawn happens, that is when we can move from frozen back up to here. We get some movement back. We get this ability to start to choose again back. So that is also when we feel this. It's a spark. It's like a pilot light. It's the moment that you know that you are no longer frozen and that you can move again. I think that the spark is an upwards energy that is essentially trying to get us to climb from here, the black and white setting, up to here. Safe, connected, nuanced thinking, able to socialise, able to learn, all that kind of stuff, right? It's got this thwump, this lifting sort of feeling to it. Imagine that kind of energy happening without any kind of container to help it, to give it direction. Yeah. So I think what happens if boundaries are not in place is that it shoots outwards. It doesn't turn inwards. People try to put themselves back together. The spark is essentially an energy that would help us put ourselves back together. But if boundaries have not formed in childhood, so if we have not developed this, where we can have a yes boundary and a no boundary that channel us up into this connected space, then we don't have this container. This middle section in the Realcovery model is a container. It is always a container because the Realcovery model's full name is the Realcovery Scaffolding and Container Model. Sometimes this functions as a womb, sometimes it functions as a plant pot, sometimes it functions as a cave to hide in. In this case, it functions as the direction, the boundaries, the sort of path, if you like, for whole connection. But if that's missing, if we have done this instead, there you go. If this is a completely closed boundary and there is no boundary here at all, this is totally open, then we're not directed back into connection with ourselves. We're not directed back into the inside, we're directed outwards. So here we go, the spark has happened, we're mobilised now. We can't turn inwards to put ourselves back together because we didn't develop that setting. We don't have that, so we shoot outwards. When we're not turning inwards to connect with ourselves, then when we're looking outwards, we're seeking wholeness and connection with someone else. So then these pairs form. So you might have a pair who forms a narcissist egoist bond, or a pair of people who are the same age who enter into a dynamic of parent and child, leader and follower, teacher and student. Those kind of dynamics in relationships that are not equal, that are opposite extremes, but that need each other for survival. Essentially, these two have formed to compensate for not being able to find those in each other. They are each other's missing piece. There's all sorts of issues there. Extreme dependency, codependency. If one leaves, the other feels like they might not survive because they are tied together, because they are each other's other half. So I've drawn this model, a process, because I wanted to understand what happens if that partnership does break up. And what I think can happen, if this person has an entirely closed boundary, they are very likely in a split to turn around and say, oh, it's not me, it's you. It's not my fault. I don't have to do anything. It's entirely you. You know, not to be able to turn inwards because they have got this huge boundary. That means that they would never look at themselves to believe that they might have to change anything about themselves. And also they might actually, I wonder, be the one who usually does the upping and leaving. Unless, of course, they have done something so awful to this person that this person, who has probably given that person tons and tons and tons of chances, finally goes, hang on a minute, that was really extreme. That is threatening me now more than being in this partnership is. I need to go. So sometimes that can happen too, I think. So I think because this person has the really completely closed boundaries, they probably don't believe that they need to change anything about themselves. But this person, who is the one who was more like the sponge, will probably be in a state of, oh my God, I'm so awful. I have to change everything about myself. Oh dear. And they might be begging to go back to this person because they might have lost their guide for life. You know, but if they can't return to this, they might be doing things like soothing and appeasing and I'm sorry, I'll change, I'll do my best, give me another chance, that kind of thing. But if that is not possible, if for some reason this does not reconnect, then I think they will fall. And people will often say, I feel like I'm sinking, I feel lost, I feel like I'm drowning. All of those kind of expressions are in our language that really do story this experience of dropping back down to a phase of unmaking. I'm sure I'm missing lots of nuances out here, but really I just want to show you this drawing because it talks about boundaries. So this person might fall, and that kind of fall into being unmaking, it's the unmaking of everything you know. It can feel like the end of your world in a really, really deep survival level place. But in some ways, it's not the end of everything. It is the end of everything you know, but that is not the end of everything. New bubbles can be blown, new lives can be created. So this is actually, although it's a huge, horrible ending, that feels like you might never, ever, ever recover from it again. It actually also is the chance for a redo. So then you kind of reset and you go back here to this place, probably for a while, this kind of frozen, collapsed sort of space. And then as that goes on, you might experience something that gives you the chance to feel safe enough to let out a big sigh or an in-breath and then climb up the ladder to feeling, yes, still unsafe, but mobilized. As soon as that happens, I think a person now has the ability to put boundaries in place based on lived experience. So if you did not form boundaries here, you might then have formed boundaries here or have a sense of needing boundaries because you might be, fucking hell, I'm never going to go through that again. I don't ever want to feel that bad again. I don't ever want to go through that. I mean, I've said that. I've heard other people say it. Lynn from the Echo Chamber said it even just the other day. Never wanting to go through something again lodges in your head the need for boundaries. Now, how interesting is that? Because then these boundaries, you have a yes boundary, what you will accept, and a no boundary, what you won't accept. And that means that when the spark sends this upwards energy to try send us up this ladder again to this safe place, then all of a sudden, oh my God, you can actually climb. You're like, no, I'm not going there again. I'm not going to look outwards, and I'm not going to find someone else to complete me. I'm going to do the work on myself. I'm going to turn inwards, and I'm going to work to heal. I'm going to go to therapy. I'm going to go to groups. I'm going to learn to say no. I'm going to learn to speak up. And then, when you do that, then you have the chance to actually reconnect and become genuinely whole, and have this nuanced thinking and this safety, and then this vibrant, beautiful, rainbowy life. So if you didn't form these boundaries as a child because you were finding yourself born into an unsafe environment, children accept abuse in the same way they accept milk. They have no choice. And this is a biological response to help somebody survive. If you find that that was your setting and you didn't develop this, that means that through living and through lived experience, and as you go through your life, however, your life experiences become super important and can then be the way that you get these boundaries in place and then are able to reconnect and heal. I gotta say it here, I'm adding this bit, because this pretty much means that fucking up and making mistakes is going to be an essential part of healing. Now, I really want to tell you about this diamond, this red and green diamond, like in the center. I think that is incredibly important, but I'm going to do that in a different video, because I was trying to make what was a 20-minute video just for this one into a 2-minute video for both of these, and I don't think I've really succeeded. But anyway, I would like to tell you about these diamonds, and I'll do that in a separate video. Thank you for watching. I'd love to know what you think about this. Again, this is all my personal opinion, my own processing. I'm not a trained psychotherapist. I haven't learnt this through studying on a degree. I have learnt this through living it and through being in peer support spaces for years and years, hearing the stories of hundreds of people sharing what healing was for them. Okay, anyway, thank you for watching. Take care, everybody. Bye. Find the Realcovery Journal, which is essentially a guide to how the Realcovery Model works, but also a kind of workbook with questions and space for you to process and use for yourself. Find that on Amazon. It's there now if you'd like to experiment with this model and explore what it might mean for you. Okay, take care, bye.